The stars were endless. They stretched like silver dust across the dark ocean of space. In that silence, among millions of shining worlds, a small voice rose. It was not the voice of a human. It was not the call of a great empire. It was the cry of a forgotten race. Their planet was dying. The skies burned with fire. The ground cracked open, spilling smoke and ash. Families huddled together, holding their children close. They looked at the heavens, begging for someone to hear them. Their radio signals screamed across the void, sharp and desperate. "Help us! Please help us!" The cry reached the ears of many. Giant fleets of alien empires heard it. Their ships were strong, their armies vast. Yet they turned away. Some said, "It is not worth the effort." Others laughed and said, "Let them die. Their world is too small to matter." The great powers of the galaxy stayed silent. They chose comfort over compassion. But the cry did not vanish. It echoed further, until it touched the path of a single human ship. The ship was old. Its armor bore scars of past battles. It drifted quietly between stars, carrying a small crew who dreamed only of survival. On the bridge sat one man, a captain with weary eyes. His hands rested on the worn console. He had heard countless signals in his life, but this one was different. The voice of the alien children cracked through the speakers. It was raw. It was helpless. The captain felt something strike deep within him. Memories of Earth rose in his heart. He remembered how, long ago, humans too had been ignored. How no one came when they suffered. How they had stood alone against storms, wars, and hunger. And how, in the end, they survived because someone chose to act. The crew looked at him. They waited for orders. Most expected him to silence the signal and move on. That was the safe choice. That was the normal choice. The galaxy had rules, and one of them was simple: never waste your life on the weak. The captain's voice was quiet. Yet it carried a strength that filled the room. "We are not turning away. Set a course for that world." Shock spread across the crew. One officer whispered, "Captain, we cannot fight. Our ship is too small. We will die if we face their enemies." The captain looked at them, and his eyes were calm. "If we do nothing, then we are already dead. Humanity must not ignore their cries." His words settled in the hearts of the crew. Some still feared. Some doubted. But they trusted him. They knew his heart was different. He was the kind of man who would stand alone if he had to. Outside, the stars kept burning. The alien voices grew weaker, almost lost in the storm of space. Yet the human ship turned its nose toward the dying world. Engines roared. The journey began. On the planet below, the aliens wept. They thought no one had heard. They thought the universe had abandoned them. Their homes fell to fire. Their skies choked with smoke. The smallest among them clung to their mothers, asking questions no parent could answer. "Will anyone come for us? Will we live tomorrow?" No answer came. Only silence. Until, far above their burning sky, a faint light appeared. The human ship broke through the darkness. It was not a great vessel. It was not a fleet. It was only one ship, fragile against the storms of war. Yet to the desperate, it was brighter than the sun. The captain stood at the viewing window. His heart tightened as he looked down at the suffering world. He whispered to himself, as if speaking to the entire galaxy, "If no one helps them, then I will. Humanity will answer when others turn away." At that moment, the story of one brave human began. A story that would spread across the stars. But he did not know what awaited him. He did not know that powerful enemies were already watching. Enemies who would not forgive his defiance. All he knew was that the cries had reached him. And he could not ignore them. The void was no longer silent. The human had answered. And the galaxy would never be the same. The ship cut through the dark, a single spark against the endless night. It was not a vessel built for glory. Its engines were tired, its metal bones carried the weight of too many battles. Yet inside that small human ship lived a fire stronger than any empire's fleet. The crew sat in silence. The captain's order had been clear. They were going to the burning world. No one else had answered the cries. No one else had cared. But he had chosen. Now they were all bound to his choice. An officer finally spoke, his voice low, almost fearful. "Captain, if we go there, we may never return. Their enemies will find us. We have no allies. No weapons strong enough to fight them." The captain's eyes remained on the stars ahead. His hands rested on the console, steady as stone. "We do not measure our worth in weapons. We measure it in courage. Humanity does not walk away from the weak." The words struck the crew like a hammer. Some felt pride. Some felt dread. Yet none could deny the truth. Their captain was not a man who bent to fear. He had seen the cruelty of the galaxy. He had seen what silence cost. And he refused to be part of it. Far below, the alien world continued to bleed. The humans received clearer signals now. Faces appeared on the screens. The aliens were small and fragile. Their wings were torn by smoke. Their voices cracked with despair. Mothers held children close, whispering false promises of safety. Fathers searched the skies with empty eyes, hoping for rescue that never came. Every image pierced the hearts of the crew. They saw themselves in those strangers. They saw Earth in flames centuries ago, when no one believed humanity would survive. They remembered how humans rose, not because of strength, but because of hope. The ship's medic clenched her fists. "We cannot leave them," she said softly. "If we do, then what are we?" The captain turned to her. For the first time that day, a small smile touched his face. "Exactly," he answered. "What are we if we walk away?" The ship grew louder as systems came alive. Engines roared like a heartbeat. Shields lit up in preparation. The crew moved with renewed purpose. Fear still lived in their eyes, but alongside it now burned something greater. Hope. Beyond the stars, warnings began to arrive. The great powers of the galaxy had noticed the human signal. Their messages were sharp and cruel. "Do not interfere. Turn back before it is too late. You are a small species. Stay in your place." Each warning was ignored. The captain sent only one reply. His voice was steady, but behind it burned the fury of an entire world. "We are human. We will not abandon the weak." The words spread across hidden channels, carried by whispers in the dark. Some mocked him, calling him reckless. Some admired him, calling him brave. No matter the judgment, the galaxy had taken notice. The ship closed in on the burning planet. From orbit, the damage was clear. Whole cities were swallowed by fire. Rivers ran black with ash. The sky itself seemed to scream. The crew stood at the viewing windows, silent. Their breath caught in their throats. None had seen suffering so complete. For a moment, even the strongest among them wanted to turn back. But then the captain spoke. His voice was calm, but it held the weight of destiny. "They believe no one will come. Let us show them what it means to be human." His words carried like a spark into every soul aboard. The crew lifted their heads. Fear was still there, but pride stood taller. The ship lowered toward the planet's atmosphere. Flames licked at the hull. The world's storms raged against their descent. Alarms rang, but no one faltered. Through the fire and smoke, the humans pressed on. They were not saviors carved from legend. They were not heroes born from prophecy. They were ordinary people. But they carried the heart of a species that had never surrendered. On the surface, the aliens looked to the sky once more. Their voices were faint, broken by despair. Then, through the clouds, a streak of light appeared. It was small, fragile, almost nothing. But to them, it was everything. They fell to their knees. Tears cut through the ash on their faces. For the first time, they dared to believe. Above them, the human captain stood tall at the window, watching the firestorm below. He whispered to himself, almost like a vow. "If we must die, we will die saving them. But we will not turn away." And with that, the lone human ship broke through the flames and touched the soil of a world that had thought itself forgotten. The galaxy might have ignored their cries, but humanity had answered. And the story was only beginning. The human ship landed with a heavy tremor, shaking the scorched earth beneath it. Smoke curled around its hull. Ash rained down from the sky, falling like black snow. The engines groaned as they cooled, leaving behind a silence broken only by the crackle of distant fires. The crew stood in the docking bay, waiting for the doors to open. None of them spoke. Their hearts raced with fear and anticipation. What kind of beings would they meet? Would those they came to save welcome them, or would they recoil in terror? The captain walked forward, his steps calm, his face steady. Inside, he carried the same fear as his crew, but he would not show it. He knew the eyes of his people were on him, searching for courage. And if they could not find it in themselves, they would find it in him. The docking ramp lowered. Heat rushed in. The stench of smoke and death filled the air. Beyond the light of the ship, shadows moved. Shapes emerged, small and trembling. The aliens stepped into view. They were fragile, their bodies thin, their wings covered in soot. Their skin bore the marks of fire and struggle. They clutched each other tightly, eyes wide with fear. They had sent their cries into the void for so long that they no longer believed anyone would answer. Now, faced with strangers, they froze, uncertain whether to trust or run. The captain did not move quickly. He raised no weapon. He did not shout. He simply walked down the ramp until he stood in front of them. His eyes softened as he looked at the smallest among them, a child clinging to its mother's broken wings. Slowly he knelt. His voice was gentle, steady like a calm sea. "We heard you," he said. "You are not alone anymore." The aliens blinked, confused by the words. They did not understand his language, yet something in his tone reached them. The sound of compassion crossed the barrier that words could not. The child took one hesitant step forward. Its tiny hands shook as it pointed to the sky, where the smoke still burned. Then it made a sound, a single cry that echoed with pain. The captain's heart clenched. He placed his hand over his chest, the universal sign of honesty. Then he extended the same hand toward them, palm open. His gesture carried no threat, only a promise. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The survivors looked at each other, their eyes searching for courage. At last, the mother stepped forward. She placed the child's trembling hand into the captain's palm. The connection was made. Gasps filled the air from both sides. The humans felt a wave of relief. The aliens felt the first spark of hope. Behind them, the crew began moving supplies down the ramp. Food, water, medical kits. The medic rushed to treat the injured, wrapping wounds with steady hands. The engineer set up shields to push back the smoke. Every human moved with purpose, guided by the captain's silent command. The aliens watched in awe. No empire had ever come. No fleet had ever cared. Yet here, strangers risked their lives for them without asking for tribute or reward. One elder, his wings scorched and broken, raised his voice. His words were harsh and cracked, but they carried the weight of truth. He asked the question that lived in every heart. Why? Why come for us, when no one else did? The captain looked at him. His answer was simple, spoken like a vow. Because someone must? The elder's eyes filled with tears. The crowd of survivors lowered their heads in gratitude. They had called into the void, and for the first time, the void had answered. But high above the burning world, danger stirred. Ships moved silently in the darkness, watching. Raiders and scavengers, drawn by weakness, had noticed the human presence. They saw not an army, not a fleet, but one fragile vessel standing against fire. In their eyes, it was foolishness. In their hearts, it was an opportunity. The humans did not know yet. The aliens could not see beyond their sky. But the galaxy was already shifting. One small act of compassion had set a chain of events in motion. The captain stood among the survivors. Ash clung to his uniform, but he did not care. He placed a hand on the child's shoulder. For the first time since their cries had gone unanswered, the people of that world felt something powerful. They felt safe. They felt hope. And in the shadows of space, those who wished to crush that hope began to move closer. The first contact was not the end. It was only the beginning of the fight to come. The cries of the weak had been answered. The human ship stood on the surface of the dying world, its crew working tirelessly to bring hope where none had been. Yet across the galaxy, powerful eyes had turned toward this act. And those eyes were not kind. The first messages came as sharp signals, cutting into the human ship's calms. Cold, commanding voices filled the air. Turn back. Leave this world. Their fate is sealed. Another voice followed, harsher, dripping with disdain. You are human. You are nothing. You have no right to interfere with matters beyond your reach. The captain listened in silence. Around him, his crew grew tense. Some shifted uneasily at their stations, glancing at one another with doubt. To defy the galaxy's great powers was to step into certain danger. Their ship was too small. Their numbers too few. If the empires chose to strike, they would be crushed. Yet the captain showed no fear. He stood tall on the bridge, his face calm, his voice steady. Send my reply, he said. The calm officer nodded, waiting. The captain's words were simple. They carried no threat, no plea. Only truth. Humanity does not abandon the weak. The message was sent. And the galaxy trembled with whispers. Some mocked the humans. They called them reckless, foolish, blinded by emotion. Others admired them, quietly, afraid to speak aloud but inspired nonetheless. For centuries, the strong had ruled by ignoring the small. Now, one fragile species dared to break that silence. In hidden corners of space, minor worlds took notice. Planets long oppressed felt a flicker of courage. If the humans could defy the giants, perhaps they too could stand tall one day. But not all who watched were silent observers. From the black edge of space, scavenger fleets stirred. Ruthless raiders who thrived on broken worlds saw an opportunity. If the great empires would not act, then they would. A dying planet, filled with desperate survivors, was easy prey. And now, one foolish human ship stood in their way. On the surface, the crew worked with determination. Supplies were unloaded. Injuries were treated. Children who had known nothing but fear laughed faintly for the first time. Hope spread like fire through the ashes. Yet the warnings continued. Each hour brought new threats. You will be punished for this. You do not understand the price you will pay. Leave now while you still live. The medic clenched her fists, anger burning in her eyes. How can they say this? How can they watch an entire people die and call it justice? The captain placed a hand on her shoulder. Because they have forgotten what it means to feel. We have not. That is our strength. The words settled deep in the hearts of the crew. Their fear did not vanish, but it became something else. It became resolve. Night fell across the planet, though the sky still glowed with flames. The humans and the aliens sat together around the ship, sharing food and water. Language was still a barrier, yet kindness needed no translation. Smiles replaced tears. Gentle hands replaced trembling ones. Above them, hidden in the stars, the raider fleet moved closer. Their ships were silent predators, dark against the void. They had no interest in mercy. To them, weakness was a treasure, suffering was a chance for power. The human sensors caught the first shadow. Alarms rang through the ship. Officers hurried to stations, fear rising like a wave. They are coming, the navigator whispered. The captain walked to the center of the bridge. He looked at every face around him, his crew who had chosen to follow him into the fire. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of steel. Remember why we are here. Not for victory. Not for glory. We are here because someone must stand for those who cannot stand for themselves. If the galaxy calls us fools, then let us be fools. But let us be fools who did not turn away. The crew straightened at his words. Their hands steadied. Their hearts beat strong. Above the burning world, the first raiders' ships broke through the clouds, their weapons glowing with fire. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and hopelessly small. Yet on the ground, the rescued aliens looked to the sky, and for the first time they did not see despair. They saw a shield. They saw courage. They saw humans willing to fight for them when no one else would. The resistance of the galaxy had begun. Not with armies. Not with fleets. But with one ship, one crew, and one captain who refused to bow. And as the raiders closed in, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. The battle for the week was about to begin. The night sky tore open with fire. Raiders' ships descended like vultures, their weapons glowing red against the dark clouds. The ground shook with every blast. The fragile alien survivors screamed and clung to each other, their small bodies trembling with fear. They had thought hope had come. Now they feared it would be stolen once more. Inside the human ship, alarms screamed. Red lights flashed across the bridge. The crew moved quickly to their stations, hands trembling yet steadying with every breath. They knew the truth. Their ship was old. Their weapons were weak. Against the raiders, they had no chance in open battle. Yet the captain stood at the center, his eyes fixed on the screens. His voice was calm, though the storm raged around them. "We hold the line. We fight with what we have. Not because we can win, but because they must be saved." The crew straightened. Fear did not vanish, but courage rose to meet it. The first wave of raider fire struck the shields. The ship groaned, metal screaming under the weight of impact. Sparks flew across the bridge. The navigator called out, "Shields down to 70%. The captain did not flinch. "Target their flanks. Hit where they are weak." The gunner fired. Small blasts shot into the night, striking one raider's wing. The enemy ship spun, flames trailing behind it, and crashed into the ground below. The crew cheered, but the captain raised his hand. "Do not celebrate. This is only the beginning." More raiders swarmed. Their numbers filled the sky. The human ship weaved between them, dodging blasts, answering with quick strikes. The crew fought with precision, using every ounce of training, every trick of survival. They were not stronger. They were not faster. But they were clever. The engineer rerouted power from non-essential systems to keep the shields alive. The medic rushed between injured crew members, binding wounds while the battle raged on. Every man and woman aboard gave everything they had. On the ground, the aliens watched with wide eyes. They had never seen such defiance. A single fragile ship standing against an entire fleet. Every blast of human fire lit their hearts with hope. Every maneuver whispered a promise, "You are not forgotten." But the raiders pressed harder. Their leader, hidden in the largest ship, sneered. "One human vessel dares to defy us? Break them. Show the galaxy what happens to fools." The raiders' ships unleashed a storm. Blasts shook the sky. The human shields cracked. Panels exploded on the bridge. Smoke filled the air. The navigator shouted, "We cannot take another direct hit." For a moment, despair threatened to crush them. The crew looked at their captain, waiting for the order to retreat. But retreat was not in him. His voice rose above the alarms, steady as stone. "Hold the course. Every second we stand gives them another chance to live." The crew obeyed. Their hearts burned with his fire. Then, an idea struck the captain. He looked at the tactical display. The raiders were spread wide, greedy for the kill. That greed was their weakness. "Prepare the traps," he ordered. The engineer's eyes widened. "Captain, that will drain the core. We may not survive." "We will survive long enough," the captain replied. They deployed drones into the storm. Tiny machines, almost invisible in the chaos, scattered among the raiders' ships. At the captain's command, they detonated. Explosions lit the sky, chains of fire tearing through enemy formations. Raiders' ships collided, spinning into one another in panic. The humans seized the moment. The gunner targeted exposed engines, striking hard and fast. 2 more ships fell. The crew roared in triumph. But the cost was high. The human ships shook violently. Systems failed one by one. The shields dropped to 30%. Power flickered. The medic braced herself against the wall as the lights dimmed. On the ground, the aliens raised their voices in prayer. They had no words for the humans' language, yet their cries carried the same message. Do not fall! Do not leave us! The captain heard their cries through the comms, faint but clear. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned with resolve. We fight until the last breath, he whispered. Because we are human. And humanity does not surrender. The raider fleet regrouped, furious and relentless. The battle was not over. In truth, it had only begun. The human ship, battered and burning, rose once more into the firestorm. Its captain stood unshaken. His crew stood with him. Against all odds, against all reason, they fought. Not for victory. Not for glory. But for the weak who had no one else. And with every blast, every desperate maneuver, they carved a legend into the stars. The human ship burned in the sky. Metal tore. Sparks rained across the bridge. Systems screamed in protest as each new strike shook the vessel to its core. The crew fought with desperate hands, their faces pale, their bodies pushed beyond exhaustion. The raiders pressed harder. Their numbers still filled the heavens, a swarm of shadows blotting out the stars. Their leader's voice cut through the comms like a blade. Humans! You cannot win! You are nothing but insects! Surrender, and perhaps I will let you crawl away. The captain stood tall, even as smoke coiled around him. His face was streaked with ash, his eyes burning like fire. We do not crawl. We stand. And we will stand until the last breath. His words rang across the bridge. His crew straightened, refusing to bow to despair. But inside, they all knew the truth. The ship could not hold much longer. Shields were down to 20%. Weapons were nearly drained. The medic whispered a silent prayer as she tended to the wounded. The engineers' hands bled from burned controls. Still they fought. Because to stop fighting was to betray the voices crying out below. On the surface, the aliens gathered together, eyes fixed on the blazing sky. Every blast shook their hearts. Every scream of the human engines made them tremble. Yet they refused to look away. They had been forgotten for so long. They would not turn from the only ones who had come. Children clung to their parents. Elders whispered words of strength. All of them prayed in their own way that the humans would endure. Then, just as the human ship faltered under another barrage, the unexpected happened. A second signal pierced the void. A ship entered the battle. Not a raider, not an Empire vessel. It was a small freighter, scarred and weak, much like the human craft. Its captain spoke, his voice nervous but firm. We heard your words. We cannot stay silent. We stand with humanity. The raiders roared with anger as the freighter opened fire. Its shots were weak, barely scratching the enemy armor, but they drew attention. For the first time, the humans were not alone. More signals followed. A scout ship from a forgotten colony. A merchant vessel with rusty cannons. A medical ship carrying no weapons, only shields. One by one they arrived, answering the humans' call without ever being asked. The crew of the human ship stared in disbelief. Their eyes filled with tears. The captain's lips curved into the smallest smile. His voice trembled, but it carried hope. We are no longer alone. Together we can stand. The newcomers moved into formation. Though scattered and weak, their courage was unshakable. Their firepower, small as it was, became a wall of resistance. The raiders faltered, shocked by the sudden defiance. The alien survivors below looked to the sky and saw something they had never imagined. Ships from different worlds, different people, all fighting together to protect them. Hope spread like wildfire, stronger than fear. The raider leader snarled. Fools! All of you! You think your scraps of metal can resist me? But the galaxy had shifted. What began as one fragile human act had become a flame no storm could smother. The battle turned. The human captain coordinated with the others, his voice steady, guiding them like a conductor of war. Strike their engines. Protect the weak. Hold the line. Together they answered, their voices firm, their courage growing. Blasts tore through the raiders' formation. Their numbers still outmatched the defenders, yet for the first time the tide slowed. The human engineer rerouted power one last time, forcing the cannons to fire beyond their limits. The gunner struck true, piercing the core of a raider warship. The explosion lit the night, shaking the heavens. The crew roared with triumph. The raiders hesitated. Fear began to creep into their hearts. They had expected an easy slaughter. Instead, they faced unity. Instead of silence, they faced defiance. On the surface, the alien survivors wept openly. They held each other, their tears falling not from despair but from wonder. Their voices rose in a single chant, though the humans could not understand the words. The meaning was clear. Do not fall. Do not give up. The human captain heard the cries through faint calms, broken but powerful. His heart swelled. He knew this was no longer only about one ship, one people, or one dying world. This was about something greater. This was about hope. The turning point had come. The galaxy, once deaf to the cries of the weak, now listened. And all of it had begun with one human who refused to walk away. Above the burning world, the raiders roared again, regrouping for another strike. The defenders tightened their formation, bruised but unbroken. The war was not won. The danger was not over. But the balance had shifted. And in the silence between the battles, the universe whispered of a truth that could not be undone. One brave human had lit a fire across the stars. The battle slowly faded into silence. The night sky, once filled with fire and chaos, now glowed with drifting wreckage. Raiders' ships burned as they fell, their shadows broken, their hunger defeated. The defenders, battered and scarred, remained. They were bruised, bleeding, but alive. On the ground, the alien survivors looked up at the heavens, their eyes wide with wonder. For the first time in countless years, their sky did not bring despair. It brought hope. The human ship hovered above the scorched earth, its hull cracked and torn, yet still standing. Inside, the crew leaned against the walls, exhausted beyond measure. Their hands shook from fatigue. Their bodies ached with wounds. But when they looked at each other, they did not see despair. They saw pride. The captain stood at the viewing window, watching the planet below. His face was lined with soot and blood, but his eyes burned with quiet strength. Around him, the bridge was filled with silence, the kind of silence that comes after a storm. At last the medic spoke. Her voice was soft, filled with awe. We survived. Against everything we survived. The captain nodded. His voice was calm, almost a whisper. We survived because we stood for something greater than ourselves. On the surface, the aliens gathered near the landing site. They were still weak, still fragile, but their eyes shone with light. When the captain stepped down from the ramp, silence spread among them. Thousands bowed their heads in respect. A small child, the same one who had placed its hand in his before, walked forward. It carried a broken piece of metal, polished into a symbol. The child placed it in the captain's hand, looking up with tearful eyes. The elder stepped forward, his voice trembling as he spoke in his broken tongue. The translator struggled to catch the meaning, but the words were clear enough. Why? Why did you come, when no one else did? The captain looked at the crowd before him. He held the child's gift tightly, his heart heavy with emotion. His answer was simple, carried on a voice that echoed across the ashes. Because someone must. Because we are human. The words spread through the survivors, carried like wind across fire. Tears fell freely. Their cries, once of sorrow, now became cries of gratitude. But it was not only the survivors who heard. Across hidden channels, across scattered colonies and small forgotten worlds, the story began to spread. The tale of one human ship, one small crew, standing against a fleet for those no one else would save. Whispers grew into voices. Voices grew into songs. And the songs became legend. The empires scoffed, but unease stirred in their hearts. They had ignored the weak for centuries, ruling through silence and fear. Now they saw that silence break. They saw courage rise from the smallest of sparks. The raiders, humiliated, swore revenge. Yet even they knew the truth. The humans had planted something that no blade or fire could cut down. Hope. On the bridge of the battered ship, the crew gathered together. They looked to their captain, their voices low but filled with respect. "You changed them," the navigator said. "You changed everything." The captain shook his head. "Not me. Us. Humanity. We showed them what it means to stand when others turn away." He looked back at the planet, at the survivors who now waved to the sky with joy instead of fear. His chest tightened with quiet pride. He had not done this for glory. He had not done it for power. He had done it because it was right. In that moment, he understood something deeper. The galaxy was vast, cold, and often cruel. But even in its darkest corners, one act of compassion could ignite a fire that spread farther than any fleet, brighter than any weapon. The story of one brave human would live on. Not in statues. Not in monuments. But in the hearts of those who had once been forgotten. And in the whispers of countless worlds that now believed change was possible. As the ship prepared to leave, the child with broken wings raised its voice, calling out one final time. The sound was clear, filled with strength. The humans could not understand the words, yet they felt their meaning. Gratitude. Hope. Love. The captain smiled. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace. The engines roared, lifting the ship back into the stars. The survivors watched until it vanished, a small light swallowed by the endless night. But in their hearts, that light would never fade. For the galaxy had learned something it could never forget. When all others ignored the cries of the weak, humanity had answered. And because of that, the universe would never be the same again.